No one on Earth expected the skies to open that day. The sun had barely risen when the first of the alien ships appeared over the Atlantic. They were not here for diplomacy, nor were they here for peace. Within minutes, cities went dark, and satellites fell from the sky like broken toys. Tyler Bray was a junior engineer stationed at a power relay hub near the Appalachian Ridge. He didn't know how to fight. He wasn't a soldier. But when the world fell silent and the communication towers blinked out, he knew something terrible had begun. The military tried to respond. Fighter jets scrambled, ground units deployed, and orbital weapons fired at targets. They couldn't lock. The enemy ships shimmered, flickering between visible and invisible, real and unreal. Earth's greatest weapons passed through them like light through mist. Within 48 hours, half of Earth's organized resistance was crushed. Governments fell quiet. Broadcasts looped outdated emergency warnings. A new language replaced human speech on all frequencies, full of deep harmonic pulses and sharp clicks that no one understood. And then the broadcast stopped completely. It wasn't death that followed, it was silence. Cities were not destroyed, but sealed. People were not wiped out but herded. The invaders didn't burn our world, they claimed it without a single declaration. Tyler and a few dozen others were captured while trying to power up an old backup generator station. They were transported not by ship, but by pillars of golden light that rose from the ground like fireflies turned to flame. One blink and they were no longer on Earth. They awoke in a vast domed hall filled with green light and strange humming. The architecture wasn't metal, it was alive. Walls pulsed like breathing skin. Ceilings glowed with threads like nerves. Tyler could feel the heartbeat of the place through his boots. Guards approached tall, armored beings with long faces, narrow eyes, and smooth blue-toned skin. They carried no weapons, but no one dared move. Something in their presence made the air thick. Tyler didn't understand it then, but it was not fear he felt, it was command. They were led into different chambers, separated, examined, measured. Tyler was alone when it happened. The light in his chamber changed. The air grew warm. And then, she entered, the queen of the empire that had just conquered Earth. She wore no crown, but her authority clung to her like gravity. Her eyes were silver, her hair like starlight braided with metal threads. She walked like someone who ruled not just people, but time itself. She looked at Tyler, and for a long time said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but heavy. It echoed inside his head more than through the air. "Human," she said, "your mind is strange, different. It sings to me in a way none of your kind ever have." Tyler didn't know what to say. He simply nodded. The queen moved closer. Her hand reached out, not to strike or command but to touch. One finger against his chest. And then, without warning, a mark burned into his skin. A glowing symbol, shaped like an open eye surrounded by circles. Pain flashed for a second. Then it was gone, but the symbol remained. The queen looked at it, then smiled not in cruelty, but in recognition. "You are chosen," she whispered. "Do not fear. From this day, you belong to me, not as a slave, but as something more. Sacred." Tyler stood frozen. All his training, all his logic, none of it prepared him for this. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't important. He was just a technician who liked fixing wires. And now, somehow, he had been marked by the queen of a galactic empire. The guards returned. But they didn't grab him. They bowed to him. Tyler couldn't understand what was happening, but it was clear he had become something else. Something beyond rank, beyond class, beyond species. The queen looked at him again, and her voice was firm. "You are mine. You will live within the heart of the empire. Your presence will change everything." Tyler wanted to protest, to ask why. But he saw something in her eyes: loneliness. A vast cold emptiness hidden behind power and perfection. She turned and left the chamber, but the mark on his chest pulsed with each of her steps. Somehow he could feel her moving through the halls even after she vanished. Something invisible had bound them. Not chains. Not force. Something deeper. He looked around the living walls, the strange lights, the alien air. He was not on Earth anymore. And it seemed, from the moment her eyes met his, that he would never be allowed to return. The next morning, Tyler woke in a chamber far more comfortable than anything he expected in an alien empire. The bed was warm and soft, the air scented with flowers he didn't recognize, and gentle music floated in the background, not from instruments, but from the walls themselves. His body felt different, stronger, calmer. The mark on his chest no longer burned, but it glowed faintly, like a sleeping fire. Every time he touched it, he felt a connection like a string stretched across distance, gently tugged from the other side. A servant entered, not human, but humanoid. Her skin shimmered with a pattern of violet and gold, and her voice was soft, almost melodic. She spoke his name without being told. "The Queen requests your presence," she said, and gestured toward the hallway. He followed her through winding corridors filled with strange beauty. Trees grew from crystal floors. Beams of sunlight passed through floating stones. Creatures roamed freely, not as pets, but as equal residents of the palace. This place was not just powerful, it was alive. When he arrived at the throne chamber, the Queen stood waiting, not seated, not surrounded by guards. She stood alone, wearing a silver robe that sparkled like stardust. Her eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, the room felt smaller, quieter, as if holding its breath. "You did not ask why I chose you," she said. Her voice was steady, but there was an edge beneath it. Tyler hesitated, unsure if she expected fear or honesty. He decided to speak plainly. "Because I'm different from the others." You sensed it somehow. A flicker of a smile crossed her lips. "Correct, but that is only part of it. I didn't just choose you, I felt you. Even before your kind arrived. Here, there is something in you I've never known in any species. Something I need to understand." He took a breath. "So what am I to you? A guest? A prisoner? A mystery to be solved?" Her answer came quickly. "None of those. You are bound to me now. By the right of first mark. In our culture, it is older than war, older than thrones. It is not broken once formed." Tyler stepped closer. "You mean we're connected for life?" She nodded. "More than life. Our bond goes beyond body and mind. You feel it already, don't you? When I move, your chest responds. When you think deeply, I hear the echo." He wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. Since waking, he had felt her presence like a silent song in the back of his mind. It wasn't frightening. It was strange, yes, but also comforting, as if some part of him had always been missing until now. The Queen raised her hand, and a projection formed in the air between them. It showed Earth, his home, cities still dark, oceans still calm. But above it all hovered a massive structure, an orbital ring, unlike anything humans had ever built. "That is the archive," she said. "Our empire built it around your planet. To protect it, not from us, but from others. Your world is now under our empire's domain, and you are under mine. No one can harm you now. No one can take you away." Tyler didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to feel anger. Earth had been conquered, but there were no signs of violence. No screams. No destruction. The aliens hadn't come to destroy humanity. They had come to claim it. He looked at the Queen again. Her beauty was undeniable. But it wasn't just her appearance. It was the way she stood, the way she spoke, the way her presence seemed to shift gravity around her. He felt drawn to her, not just because of the bond, but because of something deeper. "Why me?" he asked again. "Out of billions?" She paused, and this time her voice softened. "Because I was alone, for centuries. And you reminded me what it felt like to hope. You don't even know what you've awakened inside me." She stepped closer and placed her hand gently on his. Her touch was warm. Not forced, not cold, just real. And in that moment, Tyler felt something that erased all his doubt. Not words, not thoughts, just a quiet truth that settled in his chest. She didn't just choose him to be claimed. She chose him to be something no one else could be. A companion, a link to something forgotten, a bridge between two worlds. And in that bond, both their lives had already begun to change. From the grand window behind the throne, stars shimmered. Beyond the Empire's boundary, Tyler looked at them, realizing his life would never return to what it was. But strangely, he didn't feel fear. He felt something else. He felt belonging. Days passed, though Tyler couldn't tell how many. Time felt different in the Empire's palace. The sun above them was artificial, controlled by machines that mimicked warmth and light perfectly. No clocks, no schedules, just the rhythm of the Queen's summons. Each morning, he was dressed by attendants in robes stitched with glowing threads. Each evening, he dined in silence beside the Queen. She spoke little in public, but watched him with eyes that saw far beyond the surface. He wasn't a prisoner. He could walk the halls freely, speak to the other beings who lived there, even ask questions. But wherever he went, guards followed not to block him, but to protect him. Others bowed when he passed. He had become something sacred. Tyler tried to remain calm, to understand what was happening. But his body had changed. His thoughts were sharper. He could understand languages he had never heard. Machines responded to him without touch. His mind and the Empire's systems were slowly sinking. One evening, as the two of them stood on a balcony high above the glowing city below, Tyler turned to the Queen. "This place is beautiful, but I don't think I belong here. I'm just human, nothing special. I never asked for any of this." The Queen looked at him, her face unreadable. "You are wrong. The universe does not offer things to those who ask. It offers what is needed. I did not choose you for your past. I chose you for what you will become." He frowned. "You keep saying that, but what am I supposed to become? A symbol? A ruler?" Her silver eyes flashed in the fading light. "You are becoming my equal, not in rank but in presence. The bond we share is growing. The rite of first mark is more than tradition. It is transformation." Tyler stepped back slightly. "You want me to change into something not human?" She shook her head. "No, I want you to remain human. That is why I chose you. Your soul, your resistance, your wonder, these are things my kind have forgotten." He looked down at his hands. They still looked like his but felt stronger. "What happens if I want to go home?" The Queen's voice grew quiet. "You can, but the bond remains. You will feel me across the stars. You will dream my dreams. And I will hear your pain." There was no anger in her voice. No threat, just certainty. The connection they shared was no longer only spiritual. It was biological, woven into their very cells. He could feel her heartbeat when she stood near. And when she smiled, something in him warmed. Later that night, he walked alone through the palace garden. Trees shimmered in colors he had no name for. Birds without wings sang tunes that circled his mind. And at the heart of the garden stood a tree older than any city on earth. It pulsed with energy. He reached out and touched its bark. A rush of images flooded his mind. Worlds destroyed, empires rising. The Queen standing alone in a storm of starlight, her eyes searching, always searching for something lost. Suddenly, he collapsed. Pain bloomed in his chest. The mark glowed, brighter than ever before. And from the shadows, the Queen appeared, not walking, but moving like light. She knelt beside him and placed her hand over the mark. "You saw too much," she whispered. "The tree is memory. It shows what was, not what must be. But now you understand. My loneliness was not weakness. It was the cost of eternity." Tyler gasped for breath. You've been alive for so long. How do you bear it? Her fingers brushed his cheek. I didn't, until now. You changed that. You brought time back to me, feeling, uncertainty, emotion, things I had buried centuries ago. He sat up slowly, the pain fading. So you need me to feel? To remember what it's like to be alive? She nodded. And I need you to stay. Because I do not know if I can bear to be alone again. Tyler looked at her then, not as a queen, not as a conqueror, but as someone who had suffered quietly for ages. Someone who had built an empire not to rule, but to escape her solitude. And, for the first time since the war began, he didn't feel like a prisoner or a chosen piece. He felt like a person who mattered to someone powerful. Not because of fate or chance, but because of connection. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, asterisk. The queen did not speak of love, but her actions whispered it, louder than words. She no longer summoned Tyler, she waited for him. Every evening, she stood by the balcony where the stars moved in perfect orbits. And when he arrived, she smiled without saying a thing. Their bond had grown. He could now feel her emotions before she spoke them. When she was worried, his chest tightened. When she was calm, his thoughts became clear. It wasn't a curse. It was a merging of two beings, different in form, but aligned in feeling. Tyler began learning the language of the Empire. Not through lessons, but through instinct. The words came to him like echoes from somewhere ancient. He understood the flow of the Empire's knowledge as if it had always lived inside him. But peace didn't last long. One morning, the queen entered the central chamber, her face cold. A message came from the outer moons, she said. The High Tribunal has questioned our bond. They believe your presence weakens the Empire's image. Tyler stood up. Then, let me go. If I'm a threat to your rule, I'll leave. I won't be the cause of your fall. She turned sharply. No, you do not understand what they fear. It is not weakness. It is change. They fear what you represent, he frowned. And what do I represent to them? She looked into his eyes. A future they cannot control. A human in the court of the Eternal Empire. A queen who bonded with an outsider. You are not my weakness. Tyler, you are my rebellion. The words shook him. He had been caught in something far greater than he understood. He wasn't just the queen's chosen, he was now a symbol of defiance against the old order. A living question mark in a system that had never been questioned. That same day, he was summoned to appear before the High Tribunal. He entered a chamber, shaped like a giant eye, surrounded by 12 floating figures wrapped in robes of shifting stars. They studied him in silence. Their voices came as one. You are the anomaly. The marked one, chosen by she who rules. Speak your purpose. Tyler stepped forward. His heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. I didn't ask to be chosen. I didn't come to rule. But I will not be erased because I was unexpected. The chamber rumbled. The tribunal responded. You speak boldly. But emotion is not. Logic, our queen has never defied the right's consequences. Until you. Tyler clenched his fists. Then maybe it's time someone did. She found something in me your laws don't see. A long silence followed. The tribunal faded into shadows. Only one sentence remained in the air, glowing like fire. The right may stand, but the balance must be tested. Back at the palace, the queen waited in her private garden. She had heard the ruling already. They will not oppose us directly, she said, but they have challenged us. If you remain by my side, it will be seen as a fracture in the Empire's law. Tyler sat beside her. So what do we do? She turned her face to him, and for the first time, he saw fear. Not fear of losing power, but fear of losing him. We endure. We prove that the bond is not weakness. We stand as one. He reached out and took her hand. Then let's stand together. No matter what comes. And in that moment, the mark on his chest flared with golden light. The same light danced across the queen's skin. Their connection had grown stronger than any decree. The stars above dimmed for a moment, as if the universe itself had paused to witness their defiance. And, for the first time, the queen did not look like a ruler or a goddess. She looked like someone who had finally found home. The queen's decision had sent shockwaves across the empire. On distant worlds, whispers spread like wildfire. The eternal queen had chosen a human. A species considered primitive, now stood closer to the throne than any highborn noble. Some called it madness. Others called it betrayal. But the boldest called it revolution. Not in violence, but in meaning. If the queen could bond with a human, then no one's place in the empire was secure anymore. Ancient structures began to crack. Tyler didn't ask for attention, but it followed him wherever he went. Now he wasn't just protected, he was watched. Every word he spoke, every breath he took, was studied by beings who had lived for centuries. Some smiled, some scowled. All took notice, even. Within the palace, silence had changed. Where once he walked freely, now the halls felt heavier. Some doors no longer opened to him. Certain advisors avoided his gaze. Others bowed too deeply. Respect mixed with fear is a dangerous thing. The queen remained steady. In public, she addressed the empire with calm authority. This bond is not a threat. It is a path forward, she said. Our future must be chosen, not inherited. And I have made my choice. Behind closed doors, her strength faded. Only Tyler saw the weight she carried. He once found her in the starlight chamber, eyes closed, fingers trembling. They wait for me to falter, she whispered. They believe this bond will break me. But I will not break. Tyler stepped beside her. You don't have to carry this alone. She looked at him, and her voice softened. I know, that is why I chose you. Not to hold power, but to hold me when I stumble. Soon after, a summons arrived from the border conclave. A gathering of old rulers from the edge systems. They did not trust the core, nor the queen. Their message was clear. Present the human to us. If he is truly worthy, let him face the judgment flame. Tyler had never heard of it. But the queen knew. It is not a trial by words. It is a test of essence. The flame sees through all lies. If it finds you lacking, it will burn not your body, but your soul. He did not flinch. Then let me face it. If the empire doubts me, I want them to see the truth with their own eyes. The queen hesitated. Her hand brushed his mark. You don't understand what you're offering. The judgment flame leaves scars. Even the purest minds come back changed. Tyler met her gaze, so let it see me. If this bond matters, it will survive the flame. If not, I'll know I was never enough. They traveled to the conclave's world, a place of stone mountains and glowing rivers. Ancient structures floated in the air, held aloft by forces beyond understanding. At the summit stood the flame, a sphere of living fire, suspended above a silent platform. The conclave gathered in a circle, robed and quiet. The queen stood behind Tyler as he stepped forward. The fire flickered, but it did not consume. It pulsed with rhythm. Like a heartbeat. Like a whisper. It reached for him. When it touched his chest, the mark ignited. Tyler's knees buckled, but he didn't scream. Memories poured out of him. Pain, hope, loneliness, kindness. Every piece of him, torn open and shone to the stars. The fire did not burn, it judged, and then it withdrew. The mark remained glowing, the flame dimmed, and a voice echoed from all sides. He does not lie. He does not pretend. He carries no throne in his heart. Only truth. The conclave was silent. Then one by one, the elders stood and bowed not to the queen, but to Tyler. For the first time, an outsider had passed the judgment flame without resistance. When he returned to the queen's side, her eyes were shining. She said nothing. She didn't have to. He had been tested and he had endured. Asterisk after the judgment flame, something shifted across the empire. The whispers became voices. The voices turned into movement. Some supported the queen and her human bond. Others declared it a sign of decay. Old powers began to rise, threatening everything the queen stood for. A rebellion formed in the shadow of the outer rings, not against the queen herself, but against what she had chosen. No human shall stand beside our ruler, their message. Read. Let her return to what she was, or fall with what she has become. The queen called for the high guard. She summoned her warships. But something in her expression told Tyler she was afraid not of battle, but of loss. They will not strike the palace. They will strike you. You are their target. If you fall, I fall. Tyler stood silent for a moment. Then let me fight. Let me stand in the light, not hide in the shadows. I may not be like them, but I am not weak. I will not let your enemies define what I am. She placed a glowing crest in his hand. It was shaped like her sigil, but smaller. This is the heartbound seal. It marks you not only as chosen, but as defender of the throne. If you wear it, they cannot deny your place beside me. He fastened the seal over the mark on his chest. At once, he felt power surge through him. Not violent power, steady, purposeful, the kind that came from belief, not blood. The empire had given him no crown, but it had given him its test. The rebel fleet approached within hours. Giant carriers blotted out the stars. The queen's fleet met them in orbit. But no shots were fired. Instead, the rebels sent a message. To the throne chamber. Let the human face us. Let him prove he belongs. Alone. Tyler turned to the queen. If I go, will you stand by me? She did not blink. I will stand even if the stars collapse. You are not alone. Even if they cannot see it, they will feel it. He boarded the envoy ship alone. No weapons, no guards. Only the seal on his chest and the mark glowing underneath. He was led to a vast chamber surrounded by rebel commanders. They were not monsters. They were proud, afraid, and certain of their cause. One stepped forward. His armor bore the emblems of 4 conquered systems. You walk among gods and call yourself equal. Why should we let you live, human? Tyler stood still. Because I never claimed to be a god. I am here because your queen chose me. I didn't ask for power. I didn't demand a throne. But I earned your fire. And I passed it. The room stirred. The commander narrowed his eyes. And if we strike you down, what will your queen do? Tyler stepped closer. She will not beg. She will not bow. She will become something far more dangerous. Heartbroken. A long silence followed. Then another commander spoke. You are not what we expected. You do not kneel. You do not threaten. You simply stand. That is hard to destroy. They did not bow. But they did not kill him. Instead, they let him leave. And in that act, the rebellion cracked. Not from force, but from doubt. The queen had chosen a man who stood without pride, ruled without ruling, and loved without chains. When Tyler returned, the queen met him at the gate. She did not ask what was said. She already knew. They did not bow, he whispered. But they listened. She stepped forward and placed her forehead against his. Then we have already won, not with war, with truth. Far above the palace, the stars shifted. The empire had not changed overnight, but something had begun. Something the old ones could not stop, and at the center of it all stood a human and a queen, bound not by law, but by choice. The days that followed were quiet, but they carried a different weight. The rebellion did not rise again. The empire did not collapse. Instead, something rarer happened. It paused, not in fear, but in thought. The queen had defied centuries of tradition, and yet she still stood. Tyler now walked the palace with his head held higher. Not because of pride, but because the empire had finally stopped treating him like a stranger. Servants greeted him by name. Guards nodded instead of following. He was no longer just chosen. He was accepted. The Queen called a council of worlds. A gathering not seen in 1,000 years. Representatives from every known species came together in the Hall of Echoes. The Queen stood at the center, with Tyler beside her, wearing the heart-bound seal across his chest. She raised her hand, and silence followed. "This is not a speech of power," she said. "It is a declaration of future. One chose him not to rule you, but to remind you, we are not unchanging. We are not above growth. He is not less. He is different." And that difference saved us. Some delegates looked away. Others nodded. And a few, the bravest among them, applauded. Not out of duty, out of respect. The Queen had proven that the Empire could bend without breaking. After the council, Tyler sat alone beneath the memory tree. Its leaves glowed gently, whispering forgotten truths. He touched the bark again, but this time no visions came. Only peace. The tree no longer tested him. It had accepted him too. The Queen joined him there, her robe trailing behind her like liquid light. She sat beside him, silent for a moment. Then she said, "I once believed I would rule alone forever. I thought loneliness was the price of immortality. But I was wrong." He turned to her. "You're not alone anymore. And neither am I," she reached for his hand, and the mark on both their bodies glowed together. Two lights pulsing in perfect sync. Not master and subject. Not ruler and servant. But two souls, bound by something no law had created. As the stars rose over the Empire's capital, the Queen and her chosen stood at the highest tower. The wind carried no fear. Only the promise of change. A new age had begun not with conquest, but with connection. The galaxy watched. Not because of war or force, but because something beautiful had survived every attempt to destroy it. Choice. And as long as they stood together, the Empire would never be the same again.